Are we ready for this? This is the beginning of the Unconformed study through the book of Romans. So if you have your Bible and you want to open up to the book of Romans, I actually took my Unconformed sticker and put it inside my Bible this week. So those stickers that you maybe sat on, but they're definitely on your seat. Go ahead, take that, put it on a water bottle, stick it in your Bible, do what you like with it. That is for you as we journey through the book of Romans this fall. And I had an incident this week with my Nissan Altima where it broke down while I was at Wake Up, and I had to get jumped so that I could go to the dealer, the mechanic, and have it worked on. And if you know my 2008 Nissan Altima, you know that it's on its last leg. But like a grandma who has smoked and drank her whole life, this thing is going to live forever, I think. It's just going. And I get like all these like flashing light notifications and all that stuff. I just ignore them now because I don't think that they know what they're talking about. I think they're actually malfunctioning. One of those just so happened to be for the battery, which is what happened to me at Wake Up this week and why I had to get jumped. But the car works. The car works. I mean, that's the reality of it. It works and it's paid for, okay? So there's a dual reality there. But the car is working. It's just not flourishing, okay? It sounds like it's laboring every time it's moving. The wheels and alignments are all off. And I'm at the point now where I'm like calculating how much do I put in this car to keep it alive. In fact, we've already started making plans for a different vehicle. So in my mind, we're already past this car. So it's just like one of these days, it's going to be like I'm going to hit the button and it's going to, I'm going to, what's that? But I think that's how a lot of us treat our soul. It's working, but it's not flourishing. It's working, but it's not flourishing. In fact, I think many of us live like King Sisyphus of the ancient mythology, right? Are you familiar with the story of Sisyphus? He got a little too arrogant, got a little too cocky, and as punishment, the gods bestowed on him this lifelong, eternal sentence of pushing a rock up the hill, only to when he reaches the pinnacle of the hill for the rock to roll back down and he has to go up and do it again. Now you'll notice in this particular rendition of this story of Sisyphus, he is moving up and to the right. Which is, I think, how our souls have been trained to operate. If we were to kind of take another story from mythology and maybe bring it into a more contemporary expression, we have right in our own New York City, the statue of Atlas, Rockefeller Center. And through the weight of the world on his back is Rockefeller Plaza. Doesn't it feel like that sometimes when you're moving through life? Like everything is on your shoulder, everything, the weight of the world, the weight of becoming a Rockefeller is sitting on your very shoulders. This is not God's vision for human flourishing. This is not where the soul flourishes, to be pushing a rock up and to the right only to have it roll back down again and have to continue doing that, or to be carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders trying to aspire to become something that very few people in this world have ever become. That is not God's vision for flourishing. In fact, in Genesis chapter 1, we see this ordering of the universe, of all the chaos that existed. God starts to bring order to it, and in each and every stage of that ordering, he says, it is good. It is good. And then he goes on to create humanity, and he plants them inside this garden, this beautiful space, and he says it is very good. The goodness of God orders the chaos into beauty. And God promises someday that an entire city where all the glory of all the nations, of all the people, all the forever and for everyone people will be gathered, and it will be good and it will be beautiful. So why do we live and feel like Sisyphus or Atlas? I think it's because we have become conformed to the patterns of the world, and that's what Unconformed, this fall study, is all about. Romans chapter 12, verse 2 says, do not be conformed to, one translation says, the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that by testing you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect. If you know me, you know that I like to soak in a scripture for a while. And since I have the microphone and the clicker, you're going to soak in Romans chapter 12, verse 2 with me for the next few months. What does it look like to be unconformed? To no longer conform to the patterns of the world. What does that look like for us to not be conformed, but instead to be renewed and transformed? Maybe that sounds a little odd to you, so I'm just going to use maybe different language around the same idea from Romans 12. Unconformed is really about the deep renewal of our soul. The deep renewal that brings lasting change, that changes us forever, and that looks otherworldly. It looks like something out of this world. It looks like something supernatural. It looks like something heavenly has broken into earth. If we are going to live like citizens of heaven, then we can't keep conforming to the patterns of this world. That's what we're going to talk about for the next few weeks, next few months, really. Now, you may think and look at this sticker and be like, unconformed? That sounds weird. Like, Charlie, I know, Christians are weird. And I even, as I picked this title for this kind of study through Romans, I was like, you know what? People are going to be like, Charlie, I just want to be conformed. Please don't make me do the weird Christian stuff. And it's not about that. It's not about just being counter everything or just being different for the sake of being different or just becoming weird. It's about living curiously. Living as though something within us is different than everybody else. That the very Spirit of God lives within us. And so we're looking for alternative patterns. We're looking for a different way of structuring our life that will open us up to eternal power, to an empowerment that is otherworldly, to an empowerment that doesn't lead to depletion and exhaustion and ultimately destruction, to a power that makes us at the core of who we are very different people. As we move through this study together, we will become different people if we're willing to no longer conform to the patterns of this world. Now, this is the truth about our human soul from that very beginning when God makes us in the Genesis garden. He says we have the capacity, we have an infinite capacity for the Spirit of God. Now, if you've ever been driving like along the highway and you see one of those big trucks, we were like explaining to the kids like how big the engines have to be inside these trucks to carry all the cargo that they're carrying. And so now our kids are like driving by and they're like, whoa, like they're not just doing this anymore. They're like, look at that. And the other day I was like, guys, look at the size of that gas tank. I'm like, we got this tiny little Nissan Altima. Like 16 to 17 gallons, I think, is about what it gets. We, in our very being, the human soul has an infinite capacity for the Spirit of God. We have a massive fuel tank. So why do we feel like Sisyphus or Atlas? With so much capacity for the Spirit's empowerment, why do we live so depleted and exhausted? I mean, how many of you walked in here today real spry? How many of us don't get that way until 2 or 3 cups of coffee? We're carrying within our soul a weariness because we are ignoring the dashboard lights. God is willing and wanting to fill the tank. He is eager. He's like, hey, free gas, paid in full. Don't worry about it. You don't got to take your card out. You don't got to swipe your watch. You don't got to do anything. There is free fuel for your soul. But you got to learn to stop the car. You can't just keep driving all the time. You got to learn to pull into the right station. You got to stop filling your tank with lesser fuels. You got to come to the station where the gas and the fuel is paid for in full. And once you're there, you got to remove the cap. You ever think about how hard it is to get gas? Man, I gotta stop driving. I gotta find a gas station. I gotta get out of the car and turn the cap. It's easier to just keep going. It's easier to just keep going until we break down. Romans chapter 1, verses 16 and 17 say this. This is kind of the beginning of what we're talking about now. Good and beautiful. We want the goodness and beauty that God has for our lives in its fullness. We want our tanks to be filled to overflowing. And Paul says in chapter 1, verse 16 of Romans, that he is not ashamed of the gospel. Could we say the same? Could I say today, Charlie, I am not ashamed of the gospel. For the gospel is the power of God for salvation to everyone who believes. It is forever, and it is for everyone. The gospel is power to everyone, for everyone, to the Jew first and also to the Greek. Just a way of saying, no matter what distinctions you come in with, it is for everyone. No matter your heritage, no matter your background, no matter your story, this is power for everyone. In the gospel is the righteousness of God. The goodness, that's the same idea. The goodness of God is revealed from faith for faith, as it is written, the righteous shall live by faith. The gospel is the power to save everyone by faith. You'll see that throughout all of Paul's letters. The gospel is power to save everyone by faith. We're going to say it this way today. Gospel faith empowers the goodness that cultivates beauty and fills us with life. Gospel faith empowers goodness that cultivates beauty and fills us with life. But, unfortunately, we're not patterned for gospel faith. We're patterned to be busy instead of cultivating beauty. I mean, when you sit down with your calendar, what's your first feeling? Overwhelmed. Crazy. Chaos. But you know what's behind that? Pride. Because if it was empty, who am I? What do I feel about myself if I'm not as busy as everybody else? Hey, how you doing? Fine, busy. Hey, how you doing? Busy. Good, busy. Hey, how are you doing? How you doing? Busy. Busy. We have been patterned to be busy instead of cultivating beauty. We are pushing a rock up and to the right while carrying the weight of the world on our shoulders, and we wonder, why am I so exhausted? Why am I so exhausted? If you just ask yourself this question as we move through these next few weeks of good and beautiful, is my life built to cultivate beauty in the world? Or am I just busy? The world wants you busy until you break down. And then when you call the world for roadside assistance, guess what? They're not coming. The world's not going to rescue you in the midst of breakdown. In fact, just like my Nissan Altima probably will be in the very near future, you will be scrapped for parts by the world. The world cares nothing for you and your eternal soul. The world cares only for what it gets from you. And so the world's patterns will continue to drain and deplete you until you break down. How do we get patterned so foolishly? Like, we know that this is not like, hey, look at this, Charlie pulling the magician thing out of the sleeve. Like, this is something you've never seen or never heard before. We know this. We know this. How is it that we get fooled so often? How is it that we get patterned so foolishly? Well, Paul tells us in Romans chapter 1, he's like, you know all these great things about God, but in chapter 1, verse 21, it says that although people know God, they do not honor him as God or give thanks to him, but they become futile in their thinking, and their foolish hearts are darkened. Claiming to be wise, they become fools. And this is the key part, exchange the glory of the immortal God for images resembling mortal man and birds and animals and creeping things. We've exchanged God for lesser things. The Bible would call them throughout the scriptures idols, images, manufactured gods, man-made. The first kind of spiritual formation question for us today as we begin this Unconformed study is, have I foolishly exchanged the glory of the immortal God for images and idols? Have I given my attention to lesser things and my devotion to lesser things, and have they shaped and patterned me in such a way that they're destroying me? James Bryan Smith, whose books we've been studying or reading through this summer and will be studying this fall. If you want to do a good and beautiful group, they're getting started in a couple of weeks. I'll give you more information about that. But in Good and Beautiful God, James Bryan Smith defines, he talks about an idol this way. He says that an idol promises a desire. That's why they're appealing. That's how we get fooled. It's something that we want. An idol promises it to us. This image promises it to us. And all we have to do in exchange is give it our devotion, give it our energy. All an idol asks for in return for this promise is your energy. But then the idol demands more than it delivers. It asks for and takes more energy than it does meet the promise that it made. Until we, those who have given ourselves to this pattern, are depleted, damaged, or destroyed, until we have broken down alongside the room. James Bryan Smith says it this way in Good and Beautiful God: nobody sets out in the morning thinking, today I'm going to ruin my life. We just go with the flow. And over time, we wonder why we're so depleted. We wonder how these wounds and damaging has happened to our soul. We wonder how we get broken down on the side of the road. No one plans to ruin their life. Nobody goes on a trip thinking, man, I hope I break down today. But this is what idols do when we exchange the glory of the immortal God for idols. They always demand more than they deliver. And they leave us wondering how that happened. So the second spiritual formation question then is, have I been fooled by idols? Have they got me? Tricked me? Got me? Guilty, absolutely. Have I been fooled by idols? Because surely I am more sophisticated than most. Surely and that's why we're reading the book of Romans. Like, Romans was written to believers who were living in the city of sophistication, the epicenter of the Western world, the city that gave shape to the world that you and I live in. These were not silly people. These were not uneducated people. These were not foolish people. When Paul is saying that they've been given over to futility or been given over to foolishness, they're like, no, I'm too smart for that. I never get fooled by idols. Surely I am more sophisticated, and I do not worship birds, beasts, and creeping things. Not I. Is the eagle a bird? America. Yeah? You ever notice how many times that bird is holding a gun? Have I been fooled by idols into thinking that my individual rights are more important than the collective good? Now this one, this was an easy one for me to start with, right? Like, everybody around Connecticut is like, hey, the gun thing, we gotta get that figured out. But you know, I'm not heard anybody say, you know what, America, we need to really denuclearize ourselves. I think deep down, we all like being protected by the biggest nuclear arsenal in the world, even though we're against personal automated weapons. What is America to you? What does America mean to you? Is part of the friction and anger and anxiety that we feel in our world because we've given ourselves to a lesser thing? A bird? Surely I'm too sophisticated for bird worship. What about that bull? I mean, sometimes I read it in Exodus, I'm like, the people worshiped a golden calf? We were in Lower Manhattan 2 weeks ago, and I'm like, shoot, they got us. Here we are in the midst of the temples of the marketplace. I do not bow down to beasts. Well, I mean, I might have a bit of an issue with money. Maybe. Creeping things. Snakes, hate them. No way I worship snakes. And then I saw this symbol for modern medicine, which is kind of this rendition of the bronze serpent from the Old Testament story of Moses. And I put these three together, and I just thought, I was like, wait a second. Do I worship the military and money and medicine? Do I expect those things to save me? Do I put my trust in those things? Now let me just make you super anxious. I mean, like, strongest military in the world, right? How'd that work out for us in 2001? And since. Best economy in the world. How's that been since 2008? Modern medicine protects us from everything except for COVID-19. How are these things working for us? If we continue to pattern ourselves according to the world, we are not going to reduce our anxieties, we are going to increase them. Have I been fooled by idols? Maybe. So the third spiritual formation then question is, I don't want to leave you there. That's poor preaching. That'd be irresponsible pastoring. Like, see you next week. I bet you'd all be back. This series got a lot more interesting with a cliffhanger like that, right? Now, spiritual formation question number 3. How do I wisely exchange the patterns of idols, fear, and exhaustion for the immortal God, faith in the gospel, and the empowerment that comes with that? How do I wisely make this exchange? Where can I reverse this exchange? And I just want to be very, very practical with you, and it goes back to what we were talking about earlier. We got to stop the car, we got to pull into the station, we got to remove the cap. So like if I could just, to kind of coach you through, like pastorally, some things that might help you reduce some of your anxieties, open your heart to a different kind of empowerment, and start living an otherworldly life, I would suggest that you start your day with the Spirit, not with a screen. I don't care how you interact with God first thing in the morning, whether it's prayer, whether it's going outside. There's an unbelievable, fireful sunrise this morning. I don't know if you want to get out in creation. I don't know if you want to be with your people, have a good breakfast, do your thing, like love everybody that's around you. But do not go to the screen first. You go to the screen first thing, and what does it do? It sets you on the patterns of the world. The most sophisticated algorithms in the world are there to addict you to that device. Remove yourself from it on a daily basis. First things first, start with the Spirit, not with the screen. That might look like Bible reading, that might look like prayer, that might look like a walk, that might look like something with people. Whatever it is, please just do anything other than the screen. And don't just for a little bit, don't tell me that, well, the screen is where I do my devotion. Because as we're scrolling, as we're looking, as things are coming in, like it is, if your life is built by checking email first, guess what's most important to you? If your life is built by social media first, guess what's most important to you? If your life is determined by what happens on your screen first, there's a good chance you'll live depleted for the rest of the day. Stop the car. Let's just kind of say, hey, these devices, for all of their beauty and benefits, were designed off of the same technology, the same psychology that Las Vegas gambling was designed off of. Quick hitters to force us into a behavior. Stop the car. Start the day with the Spirit, not with the screen. Pull into the station. Let's make sure on a weekly basis. Start the week with worship, not with work. We said it this way all the time around here, that the week starts on Sunday, not Monday. We begin our week in worship, practicing, participating, gathering around the table, studying the scriptures, singing these songs, praying together. We begin our week in worship to God, not with work. Remember, this is following the creation order from Genesis chapter 1. Days 1 through 6, God is at work, right? He creates man on day 6. What does man do on the first day of their existence? They go to work, right? Because that's what God says to do. No. They rest. Day 7 to God is day 1 to man. We begin from a place of worship, and then our work flows out of it. If your week starts on Monday, then work is probably what is most determining the state of your soul. We got to stop letting the office determine the rhythm of our week and say, you know what? Every week we begin with worship. And I'll give you permission. You don't have to do that here, okay? I like it if you do it here, but you don't have to. But please, reframe your week around Sunday. Don't conform to the pattern of the world that says the week starts on Monday. And then the third one, remove the cap. Well, this fall, we're in the thick of it now. I know it doesn't feel that way because of the weather. Start with your soul, not with your schedule. How many of you this week are already like, oh shoot, all this stuff just started. Everything's going on. Everything all of a sudden is happening. And what do? You're like, I got my calendar out, you got your calendar out, we're sharing calendars with each other, we got a big whiteboard in the house with all the different colors and stickers and Post-its and all the different, and we're just like, this schedule, 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 and then we're like, man, I wonder why I feel so chaotic. Start here, start with the soul, and let your soul create a good and beautiful schedule. Don't let the schedule determine your soul this fall. Let your soul determine the schedule instead. Make your fall good and beautiful. Make sure you have lots of goodness and beauty in your schedule, because the world isn't going to put it there for you. If your fall is just busy, there's a good chance we'll miss out on beauty. Gospel faith empowers goodness that cultivates beauty and fills us with life. I'm not asking you to be weird, but people will think it's weird. You do those three things. You start your day without your phone, you start your week in worship, and you start this fall with your soul. He'll be like, what is wrong with you? Why aren't you? Can you imagine people say that? Why aren't you as busy as me? Well, because you seem exhausted. And that just wasn't working for me. I'm not wanting to conform to that anymore. I'm actually experiencing this renewal that comes from my faith in Jesus. And it's changing me. It's transforming me. And I feel like I'm living more in heaven than on earth. I'm feeling a little otherworldly lately. So let's go back to our friend who's carrying the world on his shoulders, right? There he is. I just don't look at that the same anymore. That doesn't seem like the hill I want to push the rock up. Now, I'll be honest, I feel tempted today. You told me today I could be a Rockefeller. Whew. Man, I get it. But this is what we don't often see about that Atlas statue. We don't often think about it. And I was in a class this week over in Queens, and Rich Velotis was teaching. He was at New Life Fellowship, and Rich was teaching. And he was talking to us about silent prayer. He was talking to us about Sabbath keeping. He was talking to us about a slower way of ingesting Scripture. He was talking to us about things that are very counter the pace of this area. And he's actually the one who showed me this sequence of photos. He showed me this picture of Atlas in Rockefeller Plaza. And then he showed me this one. Atlas is staring at St. Pat's. His eyes are fixed elsewhere. I wonder if that were true of us, if we would stop the car and pull into the station, if we would fix our eyes on Jesus, if we would start to feel different about the weight of the world on our shoulders. Now this will blow your mind. Inside St. Pat's, up by the altar, is this guy. Rich called him, you can't really see him, but Rich called him Chicken Nugget Jesus. All right? Chicken Nugget Jesus. This is like Jesus at the age where all he wants to eat is chicken nuggets, is how he described him. Chicken Nugget Jesus. Do you see what's in the palm of his hand? Probably not. Let me describe to you. It's the whole world. The whole world in the hand of Chicken Nugget Jesus. The same world that's across the street on the back of Atlas. Why do we keep trying to carry the weight of what Jesus holds in his hand? Colossians chapter 1 says that in him all things hold together. You can trust him. He's got the power. And he's more than willing to fill that tank. But you gotta stop the car. You gotta pull into the station. And you gotta remove the cow. So we're gonna sing one last song today. If you would stand with us. Jesus, today we recognize that in you everything holds together. Everything. our days, our weeks, our seasons. We want to be filled with your Spirit. We want to be renewed in the depths of our being, that we might be changed forever. God, show us what it means to trust you this season, as we no longer conform to the patterns of this world, but acknowledge you as the King of the universe. Thank you for never letting us go, for continuing to hold everything together. We worship you,